Welcome, everybody, to the Building Aaronsburg podcast. I'm Thomas Aaronsburg.
And I'm Catherine Aaronsburg. Today we're talking about nostalgic things, all the 1980s and 1990s nostalgia, because right now in my Netflix and Hulu and podcast feed, there are just every imaginable piece of nostalgia, and in my YouTube feed as well. People are sending me stuff that just makes me feel nostalgic for my childhood. And I've been sharing a lot of them with Thomas. And then some of them I've been sharing, not sharing them with anybody, but maybe my Instagram audience. But one that I just got sent the other day, like really put me over the top, and I knew we had to talk about it, was on The Masked Singer. That's hard to say into a microphone. The Masked Singer, which is a TV show contest, a singing contest. But the singers, whoever's singing, has a big costume on, and you can't see who it is. And it's always way bigger than life. And so you have to guess who the person or people are that are singing.
Yeah.
And as soon as the person sent it to me, I said it has to be Hanson, because the person that sent it to me would only send it to me if it was Hanson. Because Hanson is one of my favorite bands from, I don't even know if they're 80s and the 90s.
They're 90s.
They're 90s.
Yeah.
The 80s and 90s just string together for me.
Yeah, so here's, for us, the 80s, we were both born in the early 80s. So the 80s for us would have been like ages 0 to 10-ish. 0 to 8-ish.
Yeah,
kindergarten, first grade.
Hanson would have been like, what, 7th, 8th into high school,
I think
maybe?
most of what you are calling the 80s is typically the 90s.
Probably the 90s.
It's early 90s.
But there's tons of stuff I remember from the 80s, I think.
It's probably early 90s, but go ahead. Let's hear what you got.
All right. So, well, first of all, if you want to go back and listen to the group that we think, look, we don't watch this show, actually. Someone sent me a YouTube clip of this show, The Masked Singer, with possibly the Hansons. So they may have already solved this mystery by now. They may have already guessed who it is. I have no idea. I don't even know what season it's from. But if you go on YouTube and you look up Russian Dolls Masked Singer, it will come up with the particular song that I'm talking about. It's a Michael Jackson song. What song were they singing? I don't remember.
Man in the Mirror?
Yes, it was Man in the Mirror. Oh, gosh, you guys. Okay, so, and, if we just want to delve into the Hanson love a little more, what I love so much about the Masked Singer using them and putting them in is that people can be super impressed by the voices that they have because they are extremely talented.
Yeah.
And I feel like people pigeonholed them from the 90s, from their bop days, and that's like all anyone ever remembers. They have super duper fans, and then they have the people who are like, Hanson, bop.
Yeah.
But you guys, if you listen to their music, they are very good musicians, and they're extremely good singers.
Yeah, they're really good singers.
They're very talented. And so don't discount Hanson. I shouldn't have even told you who it was. I should have just told you to go onto YouTube and look for the Russian Doll Singers Man in the Mirror on
We're not sure.
We're not sure.
We're not sure it's Hanson, but you listened to it. You thought it was Hanson. I listened to it. I thought it was Hanson.
Yeah, we're pretty sure.
So we're pretty sure it's Hanson.
But it's extremely impressive. Okay, so that being said, what were we going to move on to next? What'd you say?
You said you had more things, and I was like, I'm pretty sure they're 90s, but go ahead. I mean, Hanson was 97. I Googled it before we started.
Well, I'm thinking Alf. Was Alf 90s?
was 97. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't think you watched Alf when Alf was coming out. I think you watched it.
Did they play reruns of Alf?
Syndicated Alf. I don't know.
Syndicated Alf? I don't even know.
I don't know, but I would bet Alf is 80s.
But I'm thinking
not 90s. So I'll give you Alf, but
okay, so I'm thinking Alf, I'm thinking Punky Brewster, I'm thinking Rainbow Bright, Care Bears. Those are all 80s, aren't they? Those were all when I was a really little kid.
Alf aired from 86 to 90.
Ooh,
so late
man.
80s.
So what you're saying is that my consciousness only really came to be in the 90s, probably.
Well, how much stuff would you remember from when you were in kindergarten? Like if these are like strong memories of yours, they're not from kindergarten or before.
Yeah, and so that's the whole thing. So speaking of that, that's a really good segue into this documentary that we just...
Punky Brewster was in the 80s. It was, first episode was 84, and it ran until 88.
Oh, man, it was only 4 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that's what I was going to get to, is that we just watched this documentary with Salil Moon Fry, who is the star of Punky Brewster. She was the 7-year-old that was in that show.
Right.
She was Punky, and she just did a documentary basically about how during that time that she was a child star, she carried around a video camera, a camcorder with her at all times, which was
Well,
way
this was not
before
when
a
she
cell
was a
phone.
child star. This is like when she was a teenager is when she started carrying around
No,
this
she started
camera.
carrying it around when she was like 9 or 10. I mean, it was pretty early
Oh.
on. Like, she was first video camera, early on filmographer. At least that's what I thought she was saying.
I got the impression that they were teenagers in like the home videos that she had. They look like, at least the people she was hanging out with looked like
Well,
teenagers.
those were
She may
later.
not have been a teenager.
That was when she moved to New York. But okay, so let me start over. What's the name of the documentary? It's something 90s, I think. Anyway, we need to get you the name of the documentary so we can tell you what it is so you can go watch it yourself. But for a while I was thinking, what's the purpose here? What are we talking about? You know, what's the purpose of her doing this whole documentary? And it's basically her with all of her videotapes from all of those years, you guys, to know the dedication it would have taken to carry around a camcorder and record everything during that time and age or whatever was a huge undertaking. And basically what she did was she saved all the tapes. She recorded voicemails.
Which would have actually been tapes.
They would have actually been real tapes, yes. Like cassette tapes in the cases
it's
of
called
the
Kid 90.
Kid 90 is the name of the documentary. Yes. So she took all of these tapes, the videos, the audio, all of it, and just put it in a box for 20 years. And then she, for whatever reason, I don't know if she was always thinking she would do something with it or if she just decided she was going to do something with it, but she pulled them out and started watching them. She'd kept a diary the whole time. And this girl's documentation level was admirable for sure.
Especially for that age.
Oh my gosh.
Kids that age do not.
And the way she wrote, like she was reading her diary and I thought, wow, like I'm not that and I'm sitting here stumbling over my words now, articulate at 38 as she was when she was 14 and 15.
But I mean, she's an artist.
Hello.
You know,
so am I.
No, not she's an audio visual artist.
Yeah, she's impressive.
Artist.
But anyway, so all that being said, when she finally got down to it, the purpose in all of it was she went back to watch all that stuff to see if her memory of what happened then was actually the memory of what happened then. Did this stuff really happen the way that I thought that it happened? You know, you have memories like we just talked about. I have memories from the 80s and 90s, and you think, how real are your memories? So she was able to go back and watch all these videos. And you guys, the number of celebrities that she hung out with, like we're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio, Charlie Sheen,
Johnny Depp, Zach Morris.
That's not his real name. What is his real name?
Paul something.
Mark Goss. Paul. I don't know. It's two of the apostles, and then
it's Zach Morris. So much easier.
You guys know Zach Morris. Anyway, so these are all the teen stars back in those days. It was before paparazzi. It was obviously before cell phones, and so these kids were the only kids out in Hollywood. There were like 20 of them. There wasn't even that many of them. All grown up in Hollywood together. They were all good friends, and it was just a different time. So it was really cool. Anyway, all that being said, what I think is so cool about it is going back to the memory thing, that she just wanted to see, were these relationships like, did these people love me the way that I remember loving them? Was the feeling mutual? And through all of her videos and audio and all this stuff, she was able to go back and say, yes, like the feelings that were there were mutual. Wouldn't that be so cool to be able to go back and see that and know for sure? Like,
well, so side note, we did that sort of. Me and my
Who?
brothers, when we were in college, we had that camera that we took everywhere, and we have 2 DVDs full of
yeah, y'all have cool
all
room
the
stuff, which is
stupid stuff we did.
yeah, but y'all are just like sitting in the cool room.
That was our life, though. I mean, we didn't go places.
Well, let me tell you. So Lil Moon Fry was like, she was getting stuff done. She was doing things.
Right.
It wasn't.
I mean,
her.
we weren't movie stars hanging out with other movie stars that had thousands or millions of dollars at our disposal to go hang out and party, and we were.
Yeah. Well, you've gone back and watched them.
Yes.
And they're stupider than what you remember
just
them.
as dumb as I remember.
So the memories are the same. So I was listening to a podcast relatively recently about memories, and I don't remember exactly what, I should have looked it up before we started today, what episode it was, but basically they were doing a study. Is it called I believe it's called the flashlight effect, flashbulb effect. Will you look that up for me?
Yeah.
It's either I think it's flashbulb effect, but basically it's the idea that it doesn't even matter if it's a super significant historical event that happens to you. We're talking about parents dying. We're talking about 9/11. We're talking about super, super significant things that have happened in your life, and how much your memory distorts them and changes them over time. This particular study was done previous to 9/11, but then they decided that 9/11 would be the perfect time to...
Flashbulb memories.
Flashbulb memories. Okay. So you guys look that up if you want to learn more about it. And Thomas can put the link to the actual podcast in the notes here underneath YouTube, wherever you're watching and listening, so you guys can listen to the same podcast I'm referring to. But basically, they started a study previous to 9/11 and then continued it during 9/11, where they interviewed people as 9/11 was happening. Like right after it happened, they asked him like a series of 10 questions, I think.
Yeah.
There were things like, where were you? What were you doing? Who are you with? Some really simple questions. And they had the people write it in their own handwriting and submit it. Well, these people who are studying all this, scientists, I don't know, whatever you want to call them,
psychologists,
probably they're collecting all this data, and they've got all these people's original documents. They ask them those exact same sets of questions a year later, 3 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and every single time it changed in a really significant way.
Yeah.
To the point, and the most interesting thing to me about it was that when they got pretty far down the line, I think it was 10 or 15 years later, they showed the people their original handwriting document that they submitted the day it happened.
Yeah.
And they were so convinced that their 15-year later story was the correct one.
Right.
That they thought that someone else had forged their handwriting and wrote the other one. That's how convinced they were that the memory that they had was the correct one.
Yeah.
And so it's not crazy to think that she went back and had to watch back those videos to go, is this what happened? Is that really what happened? And man, I feel like this era, she did that back in the 80s when no one was doing it. Right now, everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
So, 20 years, 30 years.
They're doing it on social media every day.
Right, that's what I mean. Instagram, even just on your own phone. Even people who aren't posting it somewhere are still doing it on their own phone. They're taking thousands of pictures. They're taking tons of videos.
And you look back to your iCloud or Google.
You go, oh, I think so-and-so's been gone 5 years, and you go back and spend 15. You know, like you try to wrestle with your memory about when it happened before this event. Like you mark your brain with all these different events, and one happened before the other in sequential order, and just sometimes it just doesn't.
Right.
So,
or even the details like you're talking about. I was with this. I'm sure I was with this person.
Oh yeah.
And I find myself telling stories all the time, and I'm trying to think about who else was there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, it's either this person or this person.
But it probably wasn't either one of them. It possibly may have not been either one of them. You don't have any recorded history, and sometimes that person, if you go ask them, they may remember it completely differently than you do too. Which in the interview they had examples like that. So if you guys are interested in, kind of the nostalgia, there's a ton of 80s nostalgia and 90s nostalgia. I guess it's 90 because that's the name of the documentary. Kid 90. Yeah, if you want to watch that, it's an interesting perspective. I felt like.
Yeah, so it's funny. You wanted to watch that because you had so many memories of. I didn't watch Punky Brewster. In fact, I don't. Like the stuff I watched when I was that little was probably like Looney Tunes, maybe Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch Punky Brewster. I didn't watch any of like where they were like real people.
Yeah.
It was always
cartoony
stuff. Yeah.
There was another one called Small Wonder. Do you remember that one?
Mm-mm.
She was a robot.
Oh yeah.
They used to. She'd always go haywire, and they'd have to reprogram her little chip in her back. They'd pull open her. She always wore this kind of like a weird apron.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's like I know.
Super vague memory of that one. But anyway, so that's one of the ones we were watching too. And then the other one we've been watching recently has been the Britney Spears documentary,
right?
Which Thomas and I don't watch a ton of TV to start with, and we even even less watch documentaries probably because they take a pretty big time investment. Usually it's an hour and a half, which is like both of us are asleep on the sofa by the time
Right.
that passes by. We're more of like one episode of Scrubs or one episode of
something 30 minutes, and then
still gonna fall asleep during it. So but man, that was a good one, a really really good one. And I don't like documentaries for the purpose of just gossipy and learning about someone else. I like that I'm learning other things at the same time too.
Right.
Man, you learn some things about a conservatorship.
Actually, I didn't even know that was a thing. I guess it makes sense that it would exist in the cases like elderly people, I think is what they explained is why they exist.
There's another celebrity that's been under conservatorship. Do you remember Amanda Bynes?
Yeah.
She was under a conservatorship, but hers has gone much differently from what I can understand. Much, much differently. And obviously not as nearly as much in the spotlight.
She was an actress?
Oh, yeah. She was a child actress as well. Yeah. But new, she's younger.
Yeah.
She's a lot younger. So if you haven't watched the documentary called Framing Britney, it's on Hulu. And it's about Britney Spears. We're talking about nostalgia here from the 90s for sure.
Yeah. Well, she was like late 90s and then into the early 2000s is when she was super popular. So that's, for me, it's a lot easier to remember that.
Sure.
Than the Punky Brewster. I mean, like, I knew that was a TV show, and I'm sure I watched it a little bit.
Yeah.
But Britney Spears, I mean, that's when we were in high school and we were in college. So we were all, that was all that was
Feels
on the news, and
more...
it's what we were paying attention to.
Yeah.
When you're in high school and college, you're paying attention to music and pop culture in
general.
Let's
be honest, though. Your jam was the Beatles, no matter what.
It was, but like
I was jamming out to Britney.
Spears. Yeah, I knew who she was, obviously.
I love our Britney nostalgia. But yeah, that was super eye-opening as far as what she was going through in the behind the scenes stuff and the dealing with the paparazzi, because we were talking about Punky Brewster, then there was no paparazzi, and when Britney Spears was coming up, that was maximum paparazzi time where what year did Princess Diana die? Was that like 92?
No, I feel like it was mid 90s.
Okay.
But yeah,
you remember
it was the same thing.
But that was over the pond, right? That was over in Europe, and that wasn't really a thing here yet, from what I can remember. And then that whole idea came here because we hadn't gotten cell phones yet, so celebrities weren't posting their own stuff on social media and all this stuff. 97. Oh, 97. Yeah. Okay.
I thought it was pretty late in the 90s.
Okay. So I just remember them talking about paparazzi, and I was like, what the heck is paparazzi? Yeah. You remember that?
I had no idea what it was either.
And then it wasn't that many years later before we had paparazzi here that were really hounding celebrities.
Right.
And all we knew was we were seeing pictures of what they were doing, but not really what was happening. Because you don't ever, it's like a press conference for at the White House, and you only see the person that's interviewing you see them in front of the White House. They got a good shot of that journalist. They're standing in front of the White House, so you can see the White House in the background.
Right.
If you zoom back from that.
Right. Or you turn the camera around.
Right. If you turn the camera around, there's 30 of them lined up there. And you don't see any of that because you're only seeing the guy that's on CBS or ABC or whatever, news network you're watching. When the reality is you're only hearing what's coming out of his mic, but there's background noise everywhere because there's a bunch of other people. And the same thing was happening. You're seeing one picture of Britney Spears, shaving her head or whatever it was, and there was 100 other people standing out there.
Yeah, that was that. It's crazy too how much the media kind of told her story. Like she wasn't ever telling the story. At least that's what I gathered from the documentary. It's like she was made out to be this, and this is how I remember it too. When I was in high school and college, I remember like she got super popular and then just went absolutely nuts.
Was that in Justin Timberlake?
Lost her mind.
You kind of knew the points right on the graph,
right,
of what was going on.
Yeah, the Justin Timberlake, and then she had a kid.
Yeah,
and then she went crazy and she lost her kid.
Right,
and then she was like driving with her kid in the front seat.
Right,
and it's like, okay, this girl's like just insane. But when they, in the documentary, she doesn't seem so. Like she seems like. I mean, maybe
she handled it way better than I would have handled it. I can assure you, I would have taken an umbrella.
You look at all the things that she's going through, and every little detail of her life is being magnified.
Right,
like she can't even go take the trash out without 1,000 people taking pictures of her. And then what was really disturbing to me was how the paparazzi, like, they acted like they were her friend.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey,
like,
how you doing today,
"Brittany,
Brittany?
you got anything to say to us today?"
Yeah. But I think that's how they have to sleep at night. They are
I
getting paid a
guess.
lot of money to
They're
get, quote, the
stalkers. I
shot.
mean,
They
that's
are.
essentially what they are.
Yeah.
They were stalkers, all of them.
Yeah.
And so they're running around acting like they're her best friend.
Yeah.
And she's just like, "Leave me alone." Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would. I would probably go crazy too.
I would absolutely go crazy. But, as we get older too, we're seeing this documentary again. We're seeing a different perspective than we ever saw before. We're
Right.
learning more and more about it. But also, as we're getting older, we're also able to kind of have that empathy for somebody in that position. Because she had kids, I think, before we started having
Yeah,
kids.
she did.
So, she's kind of, we weren't to that age. So it's always easy.
Yeah, I think she's only maybe a couple years older
Yeah,
than
she's
us.
almost our same age. Yeah, I think she might be 39 and we're 38 or something like that. So yeah, she's very close to our age, but she obviously is experiencing way different things than we are. And so
Sure.
you're like, back then it was like, oh, you're famous. You should be able to handle it,
Right.
and you start to see it for something so different
Right.
when you get a little older and have a little perspective and empathy for people. And Lord knows she is from Louisiana, born and raised in Kentwood, Louisiana, and which is a tiny little town in Louisiana. I was born and raised here in Mobile. You were I don't know how they did it where you were, but sometimes you'll just ride your kid around in the front seat of your car. Like that was like the country roads, or not the country roads, but like on your farm or on like the dirt road back, in the parking lot of the grocery store. Like she had an explanation for it, which is a really good one. But I can tell you, like, you drive our kids in the front seat sometimes, or like around our little cul-de-sac and stuff.
Yeah.
Let them steer the wheel. Now this is a baby; it wasn't an 8 or 10-year-old kid, but still, like, we're not. It's people are so appalled by something sometimes that, or sometimes
Well, that's what I'm saying.
cultural.
Like, I mean, the media really took that and kind of ran like she's lost her mind. She's holding her kid in the front seat. Like, well, I think the baby was crying or something. They weren't going very far.
Yeah. It was she was worried about the baby. It was she was worried about the baby. Ultimately, that was her side of the story. But anyway, I just, again, just all these documentaries and all these shows and podcasts and things I listen to are bringing back up old subjects that you think you knew, and they're kind of telling a different side of the story. And it's bringing up more than just the other perspective. It's bringing up the whole nostalgia of stuff that was happening when we were growing up.
Yeah, like you knew it was happening, but you weren't really paying attention. I guess you were forced to pay attention to it because it was in front of you, but you weren't really like engaging your mind in.
I never had Disney. I never had cable when I was a kid, so I didn't know what the Disney Club, or what do they call it? Mickey Mouse Club. Yeah, like I didn't really know any of that stuff, but you know what I did know what it was? Star Search. I knew what Star Search was.
Right.
And they showed her on Star Search with Ed McMahon. We all know who Ed McMahon is, right? Well, anybody younger than us probably doesn't know who Ed McMahon is. He used to be Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. They used to have this show, y'all. There used to be a show that they would just go into rich people's houses and show you around. And we're talking about like super, super wealthy people. There's like gold everywhere,
Right.
But it was, I mean, voyeurism being what it is. We wanted to see how those rich people.
What a lot of reality
for
TV.
Sure.
I mean, that's what it is today.
Absolutely.
There's 100 shows like that one show.
Yep, absolutely. And this is not new. I'm listening to I listen to a lot of podcasts, y'all. Like a lot. In fact, when I brought up the subject of talking about podcasts with Thomas today, he was like, I don't listen to any podcasts. What are we going to talk about? Don't worry. I have enough to cover us all.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast about influencers. I think it's called Under the Influence. It is called Under the Influence. And basically it's talking about how we got to the point that we are with bloggers turning into influencers and all this type stuff. But y'all, this tale is old as time. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was back in the like 80s, and I'm saying 80s, it may have been 90s.
Let's look it up.
But before that, this podcast is talking about going all the way back to Vogue magazine in the late 1800s is when I think it was Vogue magazine they were talking about. So we have always wanted to know how the next class above us lives.
84 to 95.
Yes. Okay. So solidly in the middle of both of those decades was Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So we've always had interest in knowing how the social class or the monetary class above us lives their lives.
Yeah.
We're not ever interested in the one right below us.
No.
We're only interested in the one above us because we're always reaching for the next one up. And and that's happened forever and ever through fashion magazines and things like
Right.
that. And then now it's become more of like the homes, how what
Yeah.
where they live.
What does their house look like so that I can make my house look like that?
And it's interesting because I have not listened to any podcasts talking about this subject, but it feels like there used to be some idea that there was some separation between what you could afford and what you couldn't afford. With the ability to have credit these days, it feels like the lines are way more blurry between
Right.
understanding what's actually able for, something you can actually afford and what you probably shouldn't be buying just because you saw I think the influencer level of thing blurs the lines because you don't really know how much money they make
Yeah.
and you've never heard their name before. So you're not like a famous person. So you're not going, oh, I want Angelina Jolie's kitchen. And you're not in your head saying, well, I can't get Angelina. Like, I don't make movies. I don't make millions of dollars. You just assume they make all this money. You have no idea how much an influencer on social
Right.
media is making. And so you're like, oh, I could probably get that kitchen. And then you go and you put it on a credit card or you go get a loan for it. And it's not really feasible for everybody.
Well, I think there's that, but I think there's also ways to accomplish that look without paying that price.
Yeah, I mean, we could go down that road all day long for sure. Most people are not capable of achieving that, though. Most
But
people,
they see something on Pinterest or on social media and they're like, "Oh, I like that.
yeah,
I think I can do that." And maybe you look at it's like, "Well, I can't do it how they did it, but I can still get that look and I can look luxurious
yeah,
even though it's maybe not
yeah.
as
All I'm getting at is that forever and ever and ever, we have always looked to the person that's making more money than us and been,
right."
not jealous, but want to do a little better for ourselves, a little better, a little better. And I just feel like these days it's a little blurred on that front.
Yeah.
So today, after the finish of the documentary about the 90s from Punky Brewster, which Thomas only watched half of it, and then I watched the rest of it today. And then immediately after Punky Brewster's, I shouldn't call it Punky Brewster. That's not her name. But anyway, right after that ended, I just kind of like sat on the TV. Sat on the sofa and I was like playing on my phone. I don't know. But the next thing that came up was more 90s nostalgia. I don't know. The TV must just know that that was what I was into. But up came Seinfeld. Seinfeld was next.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was really good too. Now, was Seinfeld 80s?
No, that was definitely 90s.
All in the 90s?
Yeah, had to be.
Uh-oh. We're about to find out exactly what year it was.
89.
Ooh, just made it in there.
89 to 98.
Okay. Yeah, that was good stuff for sure. But I will say that I didn't really watch Seinfeld that much.
I watched it. I remember
it was
watching
old.
it.
It was too old for us, I think. Some of the jokes, some
Yeah,
of the things.
I want to say I
old.
watched it not when it was coming out though. I watched it.
Yeah, I mean 90. Would you say it ended?
98.
98. We were like we were
in high
11
school.
or something.
Yeah. No, that's not good math.
Oh, it's not good math. You're right. It ended in 97. Oh, we were 16? No.
98.
Jeez Louise, you do the math. How old were we?
I would have been 16. 15, 16 is how old we would have
But
been.
I remember by the time it ended, we were kind of like, it was done. Like it probably
We were
should
in
have
high
ended.
school when that happened. I mean, I remember it was something that we talked about.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would maybe sometimes catch me back then. Like you had to know when the show was on and watch the show when it came on.
Scheduled TV. Mm-hmm.
But it would always, we had like TBS or TNT, whatever. We had cable, so they would always be showing episodes on that, and I would watch.
You know what show I never got into and never will have nostalgia for? Friends.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Friends?
I did watch it, but not.
There's just a real cult. It's not even a cult following.
Yeah,
it was like big, major.
No, I'm not into it at all. Like I think I watched it because it was funny. There were parts of it that were funny, but keeping up with all the characters and their relationships. That show was very like relationship based.
Yeah.
And
it just was not my jam. At all.
Not appealing.
Another one I didn't watch was Sex and the City. Okay.
Never watched that.
Did you know there's a Mandela Effect for that? The title of that show.
Okay, back up and explain what
the Mandela Effect is. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the Mandela Effect is something where you basically think something is one way and you swear it's one way.
Right.
And then you find out it's actually something else. And there's a lot of other people who think it's the same way as you do. And you all think that
that it's completely wrong.
There's something about there being like a hole in the time.
Doubt it.
You would doubt it. Oh, Thomas, the fact that you even said doubt it. Anyway, time and space continuum. I don't even know what. There's like a wrinkle in time, and it came through, and now the Berenstain Bear. Like of all the things to have come through this whole, it was like Berenstain Bears.
That was the biggest one, though. That's the one where like it's Berenstain.
I definitely was wrong about that one.
I think everybody's wrong about that.
Okay, I'm still going to say it wrong right now because I'm not sure. It's either Sex in the City. I think it's Sex and the City, A-N-D. But it's one or the other. It's either in.
I think it's and.
You think it's and? I also think it's and. Let's find out. I think this is a big old Google show.
It's and.
Yes. Okay. All right. So some people say in. Sex in the City. Which, I mean, they both make sense. If you've seen the show, I've seen a couple episodes, but they make sense. It's and the City. Anyway.
I never watched that show. I couldn't. I know what's her name was on it.
Sarah Jessica Gellar.
Yep.
Wait.
No.
I'm thinking Sarah Michelle Parker. Sarah Michelle Gellar is who I'm thinking of. All right, so...
I couldn't tell you anybody else on that show, though.
So those two shows will never be nostalgic for me. Clearly, my nostalgia lies, like, late 80s to early 90s. Like 94, 95, somewhere
Saved
in
by
there.
the Bell, do you have nostalgia for that?
Not really.
That, like, big time for me.
Oh, man. I mean, I watched it,
time.
for sure, but y'all are big nerds about Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
Any other shows you got?
I mean, other than cartoons, obviously. We watched... That was, again, mostly what we watched, cartoons. But in terms of, like, real people shows...
You had cable, though, which I didn't have. So I was very subject to whatever... I mean, I don't even know. Was Friends a cable show?
I have a feeling that was, like, NBC or something.
Let me tell you what we watched at night at the Cannon House. The PBS NewsHour.
Jeopardy.
Jeopardy. The McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour came on from 6 to 7, I believe. And so that was a big chunk of time. That's like prime time TV.
Is prime time.
And you were watching that, Lord have mercy. And then if you really got special with it, you'd be watching the also PBS, the murder mystery thing.
Dateline.
A lot of like...
We watched a ton of Dateline.
Father Dowell. Was it Father McDowell or Father Dowell murder mysteries?
Yeah, you've asked me about that before, and I'm like, what?
Or it was like, it was a priest and a nun who were solving murder crimes.
Yeah, did not watch that.
And look, I don't want anybody to ever tell me that my murder podcast love is creepy. It comes from childhood. Yeah. I mean, I get it honestly. That's all it was. They must have been showing a lot of murder TV on back in the day.
Yeah, because, actually, so, back then, there was only one TV. It's not like today. Like, all these kids can go to a different TV and watch a different show.
Right.
But yeah, we watched, now that you say that, Unsolved Mysteries. We would watch the mess out of that.
Robert Stack was the creepiest host. Creepiest.
Yeah.
And now it's come back and I'm not into it. Also, Rescue 911.
Rescue 911.
Yeah, that was like reality TV. They used to do the dramatic reenactments, Yeah. Like the kid that had the toothbrush in the back of his throat. Those were so scary. That would really scare you off of doing anything, jumping on a trampoline or jumping off a trampoline.
There was a kid running around with a knife and he came around the corner and stabbed his sister.
Oh my
You remember that one?
No, I don't remember that one.
Don't run with a knife in the house.
That was another Robert. Wait, that was Robert. Who was the host of?
It was the guy that was William Shatner.
Not Robert. Yeah, William Shatner. Yep. Yeah. And then he was a Priceline guy later, and we were like, "Hey, there's a Rescue 911 guy."
Well, my dad was into Star Wars, so that was, Star Trek. Holy cow! That I just blasphemed. I'm sure to some of our listeners.
Someone is going to come after you for that. Yeah, my dad was a big Star Trek person too. I couldn't handle it even back then.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
Isn't it funny how I'm sitting here saying there's no choice but true crime because it was my childhood.
Yeah, there was another choice.
There was another choice.
Watch some Star Trek.
No, I was not interested even then. I would either fall asleep in front of the TV, which you know how it used to be, 80s kids. You would fall asleep laying in front of the TV, and it was like right in your face, right above your head.
Like right in front of the TV.
Man, if that thing ever fell on you, which it did several times. Because it always...
fell on you?
Yeah, I had one follow me.
Oh, never fell on me. It fell on two of my sisters twice.
Y'all, the TVs would fall on people all the time. All the time. They're so heavy. We're not talking about a flat screen TV. These TVs probably weighed 50 or 75
pounds.
pounds.
Those things are so heavy. I guess it depends on how big your TV was. The bigger the TV, the more it weighed.
And by the way, I don't know how it wasn't. Now, once upon a time, they were built into a cabinet. They were like, it was sat on the floor, and it was a TV that kind of...
It's like a piece of furniture.
Like a piece of furniture. But then the way that we had ours at our house was, it was on what we called a TV cart.
Yep.
Did you ever have a TV cart?
Yeah. And it had a little drawer with all the cassettes in there.
No, look.
Y'all don't have any cassettes?
There was no, we did not get a VCR until probably like my baby brother was born circa 1992.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, what year was he born? 2, 3, something in there.
Yeah.
So we went a long time. And then my parents realized how great it was. And all of a sudden we had every Disney movie known to man so that we could pop it in while we were driving places in the van. That was the greatest.
Y'all were so fancy with that TV in the van.
We went from no VCR in the house, period, whatsoever, to like VCRs on every surface so that entertainment children.
Yep. Plug them in.
And then you had the videotape rewinder.
Yeah.
That was fancy.
We didn't have one of those.
We got one. I don't know why.
Yeah. At the end of every blockbuster movie, it was hit that rewind, put it back in the box.
Please be kind and rewind. Be kind, please rewind. That's what it used to say.
Be kind, rewind.
But yeah, those TV carts, ours, it had wheels on it, but our wheels were on carpet. That bad boy wasn't going,
not going
anywhere.
That's right. Wasn't supposed to.
And it had faux, as I recall, it had like faux wood, almost like contact paper or something on it. Everything was made of like tubular metal and press board wrapped with faux wood contact
ours
paper.
Was a real like oak.
Dang,
ours was nice.
Fancy.
Real nice. But it had a big TV on it, so like, it had to be sturdy.
And it's not like IKEA where they warn you against not strapping it onto the wall. There was none of that.
Yeah.
You were just going to possibly, because, if you're laying in front of the TV, you're going to put your feet up.
Yes.
Up under the TV. Or
so that's how it fell on my sisters.
That's always how it falls on people.
But they opened the drawer.
Oh.
And so now the weight's out in front. And I think they stepped on the drawer or something.
Oh, yes. That's always
maybe they opened the drawer too far.
Yeah.
You would think they would have engineered that a little better.
No, I mean, it's the 80s. They were like, buyer beware. Drawer loader beware.
Surely Dad will be watching. Make sure the kids don't step on this stuff.
Also, okay, so the first TV, no, I'm not going to say the first TVs. The first TVs in my memory had a dial on them. So you turn the dial to get to a station. At one point, we had the TV that had buttons. Because, guys, we lived in a time before there were remote controls for TVs.
The kid was the remote control.
The
That's why you were laying up there, by the way. You don't know that.
That is true.
That's why you were laying up there.
Yeah, that's why they let us lay in there. Yeah. They were willing to risk our lives on the TV falling on our heads in order to be convenient to change the channel. But my dad broke his leg or his ankle at one point, and he had crutches. He used to use his crutch to push the numbers on the TV.
You have to sit pretty close for that, though.
Oh, you better know. The TVs aren't that... They were not that big. Like, you were sitting pretty close to it, and it's still... You weren't seeing much. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Have you seen an original TV, how small those screens were? They're, like, less than the size of a tablet.
Right.
And they were round.
Yeah.
They weren't even rectangular or square or whatever. I don't know how the heck any kind of film
it's better
person...
than radio. Your options were radio or this.
Yeah.
You would take that.
Anything over radio.
Well, I mean, it was high-tech. For their time.
It was a newfangled thing to do.
Yeah.
And then our newfangled thing was a VCR with the automatic rewinder. Fancy. Well, thank y'all for going down memory lane with us. I didn't know we were going to go all the way to TVs and VCRs. I liked that.
Yeah. It's a windy road. Memory lane is a windy road.
But are we remembering it at all? I mean, we're sitting here justifying each other's memories. So
I don't know.
Maybe it never happened that way. I'm sure, look, my sisters listen to this podcast and they like to pick apart some of the things I say. Because they're wrong sometimes.
Yeah, they'll tell you.
They'll tell me if they're wrong. They'll tell me if I misremembered my dad's crutch being the one that was pushing the numbers or who the
Maybe
thing
he was
on.
Hitting you with the crutch and you were like getting up and changing
the channel. I would think I would have remembered that, but maybe not. Who knows? Anyway, all right, guys, if you have any memories about your 80s and 90s raising, you youngins don't even bother. Don't even talk to us. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have remote controls on our TVs. You can email us at buildingerrandsburg@gmail.com. You can comment on Instagram at Building Aaronsburg or on Facebook at Building Aaronsburg. Also, you can watch this stream on YouTube at Building Aaronsburg. Until next time, bye y'all.
Bye y'all.
My booty, it hurts sitting in this chair. What are we at time-wise?
27.
Oh, we're almost there.
Do you have any more nostalgias?